When are we gonna get down to business?
What are you doing?
I don't know. It's Macho Man Randy Savage. I figured it was apt. Why?
Because this is Let's Get Down to Business with Stephanie.
And Kevin. Oh, yeah.
And every week we review
Disney movies and shorts. Sometimes it's the cream of the crop. Other times, it's a package film.
So that idiot is my husband, and every week I make him watch Disney movies with me because I have to put up with this stuff.
And I make her watch wrestling.
If you want to hear two adults
Talk about childish things.
and
And the history. And the Wikipedia entries. Oh, yeah.
just a note, this podcast is not safe for children.
In case you didn't know.
So we hope you listen along to Let's Get Down to Business.
With Stephanie and Kevin. Oh, yeah.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to BackTrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts. I am your Ka1iban, and your other host is right here.
Hey, it's Gooey. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I dropped something heavy on my toe earlier, and it's all bruised and hurts.
That doesn't sound totally okay.
Well, it's not broken or anything, but I did have to then work all day on my feet after doing it. I would have rather done it at the end of my day, but
Are you okay? So we know that you are somewhat younger, of the younger persuasion. Are you still at that age where duct tape or scotch tape is your best friend in those situations? I can think of all the times that I should have been wearing steel-toed boots at my various jobs, and I wasn't, and I dropped something, and it was like, gotta keep going. So get that tape out, fix it up, good to go.
Yeah. I was having a discussion with my coworker about it too, because he said he was about to turn 50, and he's like, I don't heal like I used to, and I've things like that have slowly changed for me over the I'm almost 30, and I've noticed over the past decade things slowly change, but I'm still I'm still young enough where I bounce back from a lot of stuff. So
just the slightest bit of physical exertion, I'm getting ready to move house right now, and just moving a couple boxes up and down the stairs, or getting something heavy down from a shelf, and it's like, I can't believe the next day I'm feeling it like it's some kind of workout, and it's just normal operation. Anyway,
so yeah, that's how we're doing, right?
Well, I should say that we're part of the Analog Legends podcast network, which is home to the best entertainment from the pre-digital age. It's got shows about your favorite geeky topics like classic movies and TV shows, classic video games, and more. And I should say wrestling as well. If you like that kind of thing, you can find out more at Analog Legends on Twitter. Well, this is our 5th episode. I think this is the episode where I'm going to stop calling out what number episode it is, because presumably the numbers are just going to get bigger. We're going to do this forever.
Yeah, there's no end in sight to Star Trek inspirations.
I know. When you think about making a Star Trek podcast, especially one that also comments on pop culture, when does it end? What are there, over 700 episodes of Star Trek in its various forms? I mean, you could go on forever.
I mean, we could probably double up a few, too, eventually.
Sure.
People will forget what we've done, so.
Well, I've been thinking about that idea, the idea that many, as we're pointing out, Star Trek episodes have their roots in other pieces of pop culture or real life history, and I wonder if we'll find that great white buffalo out there. It's the episode of Star Trek that is referenced in no way or is not referencing in any way anything, it's just a pure form of fiction, if such a thing exists, that stands apart from everything.
No, just made in a total vacuum.
Yeah. I mean,
I
arguably every episode of Star Trek, whatever show after the first, the pilot, is derivative of, I guess, itself. But
True.
When I think about the Cage, for instance, the unaired first pilot of the original series, it's no, I can kind of see some, there's probably some Heinlein in there. There's just some classic Arthur C. Clarke sort of Star Trek or sci-fi in there. So Yeah, it's not a bad thing. I mean, it better not be. That's what our show is premised on. But I was just thinking about, is there that tough nut for us to try and crack? Like, what is this? What does this come from?
Oh, it's hard to say because I'm not looking out for those. You know?
Yeah, things can come from the weirdest places. Inspiration, I mean. Like when you think about an episode like The Inner Light, one of the most famous and well-loved episodes of TNG.
Of course.
Yeah, I was reading about the inspirations behind that, and they're really mundane. Like the guy that wrote it, or one of the guys, Morgan Gendel, says that he got the idea for it when he saw like the Goodyear blimp. Like he was just, it was a warm, clear day in California, and he was just sort of looking out, over the hills or whatever, and he saw the Goodyear blimp, and he was thinking, oh yeah, the Goodyear blimp, and there's a message, on the crawl sort of it. He's like, what if aliens could like beam a message into your head, Eat at Joe's or whatever, and that developed into The Inner Light. So even if we ever want to do a show about the Goodyear company, The Inner Light, we're all set up.
Oh. Yeah, once that would be like the big advertising dollars. We'll do some branded content.
Yeah, right. We'll work on that. How is Goodyear doing? They're still around, right? I'm trying to think who the premier tire company is.
I think about tires from time to time, but not tire brands.
Yeah, I don't know if Goodyear has a mascot like the Michelin Man, though. I wouldn't want to go up against that guy. He's pretty burly.
I guess they got the blimp. They could do blimp versus
just crash the blimp.
Man versus
the Michelin Man. Are all tire mascots, do they have to be inflatable? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, you want it to evoke what you're selling, right?
Yeah, right. You wouldn't want like a limp balloon. Like when you get a balloon from the circus and it's been in your house for 3 days and it's kind of floating around not near the floor. Yeah, you don't want that.
Oh, no.
Let's get into what we're talking about today. Wait, before we do, I want to check in with movie talk because we both talked about going to see Dark Phoenix last weekend. Did you see Dark Phoenix?
I did, yeah. The plan went ahead as planned.
Well, our plan did. What'd you think?
I just thought it was whatever. I like that was my biggest takeaway is that I didn't have any like steamy hot takes after seeing it.
Okay.
I was just like, yeah, that was kind of bad, How did you feel about it?
I felt like it was bad, but not like aggravatingly bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just sort of like, that's it, huh? Okay. There's some good parts.
I think it was like a little, once the movie starts going, and even after seeing the trailer too, where they're like kind of show some of the elements of the movie, I was like, okay, I think I know what this movie is. I think I know what's going to happen, and it was about that. So,
yeah,
kind of a bad way to go out, I guess.
Yeah, well, it certainly is, and hopefully we'll get a even better return. But I forgot to mention last week that, of course, all X-Men films, all modern X-Men films, they're all modern, have a Star Trek connection in that many of them feature Patrick Stewart, but there was a specific Star Trek reference in the last film, X-Men Apocalypse, in that scene where Apocalypse, he touches the TV and he's like, I'm learning, and he sucks up all the knowledge of humanity through the TV, I guess. There was an episode of the original series playing called Who Mourns for Adonais, and it's the one where Kirk and company meet Apollo. Oh, yeah.
I think there was also one in Days of Future Past when they were talking about time travel. I think the wasn't the original series playing in the background of that too.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Although the specific episode escapes me, so I had my eyes open for this whole film, like looking for something like that. But of course, the sort of production staff has sort of changed over, so it's possible that persons who were putting those things in aren't doing it anymore, and so we didn't get one. There was another shot of like a TV with some classic episodes playing, but I didn't see any Star Trek.
Get the Trek heads back on the X-Men train.
Yeah, right. Well, before we get to today's Backtrek, let's look around at the present news of the Trek world and talk about what's happening. And the thing I think that's on everybody's mind right now is Quentin Tarantino, in an interview recently with Empire Magazine, this is sort of like a pre-Once Upon a Time in Hollywood interview, did give an update on his Star Trek script.
Yeah, I forgot. I had totally forgotten this existed until there was, going around on Twitter, and I was like, oh no, I forgot about that.
Yeah, he did say that it is the script is in process, and that he hasn't seen it, or he has to like get back to it. So I think what is going on is that he probably had the story, the idea, and then maybe did a treatment or an outline himself, and then most likely handed it over to Mark L. Smith, the writer from The Revenant, who he was working with on it.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, so he's busy with this, but he has promised as soon as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is over or is released, he will be back into the Star Trek thing. And he confirmed that, yes, for sure, it will be R-rated, and Paramount has signed off on that.
I don't know. Are you looking forward to this or not?
I am, because I'm a Tarantino fan. I might have talked about this on another podcast of mine, but more and more, like he keeps saying, every film he says, oh, this is my last one. Mm-hmm. And I think he really means it with his 10th film, which will be ostensibly his Star Trek film. That'll be the 10th film he's ever done. And I think it's good. I think that he's had a great run, and I think he needs to stop, because the kind of stories that he wants to tell don't exist anymore. A lot of his stuff is period pieces, and they are by necessity, because, and I'm not saying that he himself is like anti-woman or, anti-feminist or whatever, but his movies just often include kind of storylines and characters that are kind of rough on women.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's been like people who say like, oh, does he really want to include that kind of stuff, so that's why he's doing it, or
right, and exactly. And to have him tackle a Star Trek movie which is by its nature caught up in social justice, it makes me really want to see that, but also really want to quickly disassociate myself if something really bad happens.
Yeah. My like knee-jerk reaction, which was like, I don't want this, was kind of to the, I mean, it's sort of the way it's being like pushed, like for clickbait almost, where it's like, yeah, it's gonna be this gory swear fest or whatever. That was like the headline I read, and then I saw people kind of pushing back against that. Where it was like, I think that's being overblown, and also like sharing quotes from Tarantino himself talking about how he would like to expand, like he was like, you could just expand like a classic episode of the original series and make a great movie out of that. And
right.
So they're like, yeah, he's not just gonna throw it all to the wind. I don't know. I think it could actually be good. I don't think the R rating means it's gonna be like, Hateful Eight, blood
right.
shooting everywhere,
Yeah, you'll have to get a graphic, like, let's see what really happens when you hit somebody with a disruptor or whatever. But, Discovery's rated R when you think about it, or at least potentially. Or
I think about, there's some terrifying stuff that happens throughout Star Trek. Even, like, what came to mind, I guess, is I'm thinking about, like, Wrath of Khan, when they got the, like, bugs and they're gonna... Yeah, it's, like, not graphic, but I think, you think about it and it just feels really gross and scary. So I'm like, okay, I could see them like pushing it a little bit and still not being like over the top.
There's another thing that I'm kind of on two minds on, which is the idea that I think that this is both a good sign for Paramount that they are willing to open up Star Trek. It's still being run essentially by one guy, Alex Kurtzman in this case, but they're opening it up to multiple shows being on at different times, aimed at different demographics. It isn't just, okay, nerds, here's your Star Trek, for this week. So I think that's good, but also to me it's like, it seems kind of desperate. Like Paramount doesn't understand what makes Trek attractive to people. They've created a well-made, slick show in Discovery that apparently, if you listen to the internet, like half or more of the fan base hates. And so I think that they need a hit. They don't understand what they've got on their hands. And so they're like, well, geez, if Quentin Tarantino wants to do it, then fine, sure.
It's a name. Yeah. I did say in the last episode that I felt like Star Trek has such longevity because it has been able to like be different things. But usually it's like, it's being something different, and they like kind of know what they want it to be. Whereas, like you're saying, they're just kind of like, I don't know, we'll take whatever.
I think if like Martin Scorsese, or I don't know, or Ava DuVernay, or just any like hot director right now was like, hey, can I do one? They'd probably be like, oh, sure.
Yeah, they'll just take all comers, basically.
Yeah, but I don't know. Tarantino could be a good fit. I really hope they get Chris Pine back because I'd like to see him work for Tarantino.
Oh, so kind of do an actual sequel. I didn't know if it was supposed to be like a new thing or what.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, there's been rumors that they, in his expanding on an episode, people have put like 2 and 2 together. In previous interviews, he's talked about Star Trek, and he said that he likes the episode Yesterday's Enterprise. I think he said this on the Nerdist podcast. So a lot of people are thinking, okay, we already kind of dropped time travel as a thing before, so what if he expands that? But of course, that would be TNG. So what do? Do you recast or how do you do it?
You just do that concept, but with...
Yeah, you just do that again. Yeah,
you can get Hemsworth back in there then.
Yeah, well, that was the plan originally, but nobody liked their payday, I guess. So I say drop Hemsworth, get Chris Pine back, and do something similar to Yesterday's Enterprise. Yeah, for sure.
Do triples is what you're saying.
Hey, Scott Bakula's still around. We could literally do Yesterday's Enterprise. We can get the Annex 01 in there.
Or they could just make an Enterprise movie.
Yeah, they could. They certainly could.
Wow.
I don't feel bad talking about this. It's a Star Trek show, but you saw Star Trek Beyond, right?
Yeah.
Did you like that?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Of all of those movies, I like that one the most.
Yeah, me too, I think. And it's funny because, because of the Kelvin timeline and the switch, Enterprise is the only show that's still canon in the Kelvin universe.
Right, yeah.
So we did kind of get partially Enterprise movie because all the crew members of I can't remember the name of the ship now, but the ship that Idris Elba's character ran, were all the blue jumpsuits, and they were sort of like,
oh yeah,
just coming off of Enterprise era Starfleet. Right.
Oh yeah, that would have been cool if get Scott Bakula in these.
Okay, we got it.
I'm all in on that.
We're locked in. All right, we'll do it. All right, well, let's talk about what we are backtrekking today. And I have to say, I'm going to have fun, but I'm a little ashamed because this is about as far as we've stretched our premise, I think. But God damn it, I'm going to have fun. I don't
a sentence.
Yes, basically. We're talking about a film that inspired the title of a Deep Space Nine episode. The film is Batman from 1989, and the episode is In the Pale Moonlight from the 6th season of Deep Space Nine.
Vale.
Bruce Wayne.
And what do you do for a living?
Lieutenant, is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City?
Nice outfit.
You look fine.
I didn't ask. I have given a name to my pain.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
Where did you get those wonderful toys?
My life is really complex.
Winged freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
Now, we're in that liminal sort of area where you probably weren't alive when Batman came out.
No, I was born the year after.
Okay. I can deal with it.
Yeah. Sorry to say.
I love Jaws. That's one of my favorite movies, and I was not alive when that came out.
Okay.
See, the difference between us, though, is that I have like the cream of the American New Wave to pick from, whereas you have 1989, which 1989 was like a garbage fire for movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I can't even name another one off the top of my head, but
I have this theory about movies and decades, and maybe I'll go into it at some time later. But anyway, there's a movie called Tango and Cash.
Yeah.
For me, it is like the door closing on the cinema in the 80s. Like, it is the most 80s action movie there's ever been. With Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone, and it's a horrible movie. I love it, but it's definitely like, okay, we're ready to do something else now.
Stallone is closing up shop on the 80s. Who better to do it, really?
Yeah,
other than
turning off the lights,
Schwarzenegger or somebody,
locking up. Yeah, exactly. And that movie, interestingly, has Jack Palance in it, who also appears briefly in this film.
Oh, there's another connection.
Yeah. Oh, everything's connected. Are you kidding me? Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Batman, man. It came out in 1989, directed, of course, by Tim Burton, which was a controversial choice at the time, as was the choice of the man to play Bruce Wayne, a.k.a. Batman, Michael Keaton. You think people hated Affleck? People really hated this choice back in the day.
Yeah, it's like history repeats itself over and over, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I think probably, and I don't know what people thought about Adam West, but I think people were pretty much okay with Christian Bale. Although I think at the time he hadn't done any huge action stuff. I guess he did that. Did he do when did Reign of Fire come out? I'm supposed to be the guy that knows when all the movies come out.
Oh, that feels like 2003. I was, or 2 or something like that.
But I remember like thinking, the kid from Empire of the Sun is going to be Bruce Wayne. Okay.
Right.
So, I think people are very protective of this character. Like they have something in their mind, and it's got Kevin Conroy's voice, and then other than that, it's just not whatever you've picked.
Yeah, it's so controversial. Christian Bale is like non-controversial, but he also isn't like moving the meter. I feel like no one's ever like, oh, remember that classic? When they talk about The Dark Knight, they don't really talk about Christian Bale. I don't think
his performances. Yeah, right. I know.
I'd say worst Batman, I think, is Christian Bale. That's my hot take.
Interesting.
I just hate that voice.
Yeah. Like all over, like worst Bruce Wayne as well.
No, he's fine as Bruce. He's a great actor, I think, and he's good at playing like sexy rich guy or whatever. So I just don't like that voice. It drives me crazy.
Christian Bale, you've probably seen me as sexy rich guy. Sexy rich guy dresses up like a bat. Sexy rich guy that murders people with chainsaws. It's all the
That's
same
his
thing.
IMDb. Yeah.
On his LinkedIn. Well, I guess we should probably talk then about Robert Pattinson being cast as the Batman in The Batman.
Yeah. I'm into it. I like it.
Is it because you love High Life?
I do not love High Life.
Okay.
In fact, there's this whole discussion about this where the Pattinson defenders are like, oh, here's all these like great movies he's been in since.
Well, don't point them to High Life, but he has been in some good movies though.
And I will say,
you know what?
I've never seen them.
Yeah. Well, see, that's part of the problem. I wouldn't say that he's been in good movies, but I think he has been good in some movies.
Yeah. I've seen some of the highlights myself.
High Lifes. I think that he's got a thing going on similar to Daniel Radcliffe in that these guys, they must have made a mint off of these like YA book movies, right?
Oh,
so I think that,
totally, yeah.
Yeah, I think both him and the other one, Kirsten Stewart, like I think they're sitting on a lump, you know what I mean? So they can pick whatever they want to do. And I think she picks kind of whatever, but he has picked like a lot of really interesting scripts that aren't executed super great necessarily, but just he's clearly looking for like interesting characters and ways to like stretch himself. He was in a film called Good Time.
Yeah,
by the Safdie brothers, which was, again, it's another thing where it's like as a movie it barely hangs together. Like there isn't like a real story there, but just seeing like this visceral performance that he's got is really great.
Well, there's two things I see happening. Is the movie comes out and he's great. Like that's what I think. He'll be great. I think he'll be great regardless. and then people will finally just get over it. Like, they'll stop saying, "Oh, I can't believe the guy who like sparkles in the sunlight is Batman."
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
the alternative is he's still great in it, I think, but the movie is bad, and then that's just new. Like, yeah, see, we told you so.
Yeah, I don't think that he'll do a bad job. Maybe the rest of the movie will let him down, but I think he'll definitely give it his all. What's interesting to me is that he's still in his 20s, right?
I think. I don't know.
Like late 20s?
Yeah.
He's young. So, and the concept that we've heard about this film up to this point is that it won't really be a reboot. You know, it won't necessarily reference Affleck films or whatever, but it'll just be Batman in his career, I think. And it's said to be darker and more of a detective story, which I think is very attractive to me. But if he's going to be, you know, little young, smooth-faced, sexy guy in a suit, Robert Pattinson, maybe they'll have to alter that a little bit. Maybe it'll be, you know, a younger, less experienced Batman.
Yeah, which I think that's a good way to go. Like, after, you know, the past couple iterations of Batman we've seen in film.
When they cast this movie, Batman 1989, I don't think they were really worried about that. Of course, Michael Keaton got the role. They had looked at other actors like Willem Dafoe, who I think might have been pretty good.
Sure.
Of course, they went around the usual people at the time, Mel Gibson, Harrison Ford, all these people were looked at. Apparently, Ray Liotta, who was relatively unknown then, was being looked at by Tim Burton, and I think that would have been really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, but interesting definitely describes
Stir
it.
the sauce, Alfred!
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that would have totally changed his life. And I was reading through some of the casting sort of notices here, and many actors didn't want the part. Like, John Lithgow read for the Joker and basically talked. He said to Burton, like, please don't cast me. Like, I don't really want to do this. I'm here because my agent told me to. Because nobody thought that this was going to be a thing. Like, they thought it was going to be kind of campy. It was going to come and go. And nobody had a lot of faith in the project.
It's just some comic movie, you know, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally see that, because there's kind of not been a lot. There's been Superman at this time, right? And then that was a long time before that.
Yeah, Superman was in 78, I believe, so 10 years before. When they started putting this together, they did sort of model it on the success of Superman. But yeah, Superman sort of stood alone in that it was the only... the idea of a comic book movie like we have them now didn't exist then. And so Superman was just seen as another late 70s blockbuster that succeeded, and nobody really understood why, but they just kept making them.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so I totally can see that.
So they got Jack Nicholson on board as the Joker, and it was a thing that they had to really, they promise him a lot. Like, he got points off the back end. He got like a $5 million salary, which was, a fifth of the movie's budget at that time.
Wow.
And he had a schedule that was basically, he got to, like, instead of just, we'll call you in, sorry, we have to do a 14-hour shooting day or whatever. Like, he basically had a schedule that said he can only work for certain times, and he got days off for Laker games.
Wow.
Of course, he's a super fan.
His basketball, that's like a legacy of his.
Yeah,
his
and most of the
basketball.
movie was shot at Pinewood Studios in London. So I'm wondering, is he like private jetting back for these Laker games?
Wow, the Joker living the jet set lifestyle.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you'd think for a film that features him, or at least has such restrictions on him filming, he's like a huge part of this film. Like, he's all over this film. Yeah.
That explains why it's so much, like why they spent so much on him.
Yeah, they got to get their money's worth for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no doubt.
The movie was made for $35 million, which was a lot back then, but it wasn't like, huge. Just a year or two later, Terminator 2 would cost $100 million in 1991 dollars. But it made $411 million at the box office, so it was huge,
nice,
huge success. Yeah, and it led to what was termed Batmania. You couldn't, in summer of '89, you couldn't get away from that poster, the iconic poster that was just the bat symbol, embossed on a field of black. They sold over $750 million worth of merchandise that year.
Wow. Yeah, that's such a bold move. That's just the logo.
Yeah.
Especially when you said, like, people were just like, what is this, gonna be?
Yeah.
At least the people behind it.
Yeah, there were people who, comic fans, were excited about it. The ones that weren't worried about Michael Keaton playing Batman, of course. And I think for just the general public, it was a real success in marketing because Batman, let's face it, has name recognition. Nowadays, it's easy to get your girlfriend to go see a Marvel movie because either she wants to see Sebastian Stan glower at people, or she's into it. She wants to find out what's happening with Tony and Cap next. But back then, it's like, if you like romantic comedies or you like, let's say, Sylvester Stallone action movies, what's going to get you to see Batman? And yeah, I just think that the combination of the slick marketing, the name recognition, also like trailers with the score by Danny Elfman didn't hurt.
The score is so iconic, by the way.
Yeah.
Just like puts me in a place because I watched, like, like all the movies I watched as a kid were probably all scored by him. So
who would have thought the Oingo Boingo guy had it in him?
Right. Yeah. There's a couple moments too where the piano's like dun 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 dun, and I'm like, oh no, like Beetlejuice is about to show up.
Well, it's a Danny Elfman score,
right?
Yeah. He also got Steve Bartek from Oingo Boingo to help him out, and composer Shirley Walker as well did arrangements for the movie. Shirley Walker has worked on many of the DC animated shows, and when the animated series came out, the Batman animated series in '92, she did the scoring for that, and the score of that, of course, borrows heavily from the movie score.
I didn't really think about the connections between the show and this movie until rewatching it just now, and I was like, oh yeah, this almost is like, you could just be like, yep, and then the show happens.
Yeah, it was just everywhere. I remember at that time we played it in band.
Wow.
And like they're just trying to, how do we keep these parents from falling asleep during these band concerts? So, you're playing a lot of we played like a Richard Marx medley. Kids, ask your parents who Richard Marx was. And we played the Batman score. So I remember it was in my mind at the time then.
Wow.
And we took here's my Batman score story. We took a band trip to Florida. It was one of the first times that I was like away from home on my own,
Mm-hmm.
And just being an adult now and remembering like my life as a band kid, I don't know how half the kids don't come back dead from those things. Because we're definitely, not following the rules. But anyway, I remember one night we were going to sleep. We were getting ready to go to Disneyland the next day. And my friend had the Batman soundtrack. And I believe he had it on cassette because that's how old I am. And I was like, can I listen to this? And he's like, sure. Yeah, sure. So he gives me the score. And I put it in. And I've got it on tape players, at least the ones worth their salt, had a reverse function back then, right? So you could just listen to both sides. So I remember that I put it on. It was late at night because we were staying up late because we're kids. And I fell asleep. And all I remember is opening my eyes in the morning with sun coming in through the window. And it was like, da-na-na-na. I had been listening to it all night long, just over and over again. The batteries held out. So
wow.
All that day, like I was running around and jumping off of ledges and stuff like that. And like sort of humming the Batman
Did it
soundtrack
get you
to
pumped?
myself.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Yeah, I used to I still listen to scores all the time, but I used to that'd be like start the day, play some movie score, get pumped. Very cool to do as a kid.
Right. If you started with Batman, then you have to pull on one leg of your pants at a time, then the other one, put on some gloves. Why are you wearing gloves? I don't know. You have to wear gloves. It's Batman.
Do it turning to camera while you do it.
Click your belt. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, right. Of course, there wasn't just one CD that was released in connection with this film. There was also a collection of songs written specifically for the film by a little guy named Prince, I think his name is.
Stop the press. Stop the press. Who is that?
Vicky Vale. Vicky Vale.
Unbelievable, too. How many things, came together for this movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't even make sense to me.
It doesn't. I remember at the time it was like, okay, that's weird. But now, yeah, looking back, 30 years, it's even weirder. It's just crazy.
Oh,
that even came together. And this is at a time when, you know, he's not like, I think Love Sexy came out the same year. So he's already becoming like the prince that is really going to ruffle a lot of feathers. Like if they had thought twice, they never would have stuck Prince with this PG, you know, family friendly like superhero movie.
Oh yeah. I guess I didn't ever think about that. 'Cause like, you know, I was just like, Prince has always just been a thing for me, or like Batman, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, I trying to think of like a pre-Batman, pre-Prince time, and it doesn't make sense to me.
How could you? Yeah. yeah. But, he would get real sort of controversial, or even more controversial, you know, in the following years.
Right.
But yeah, at the time, it was pretty awesome, and I love the fact that the movie, it isn't just like they got some guy to do some songs and they're here and there. Like the movie like stops to do musical numbers basically. Cause it's like we got a Prince song we got to do.
It's like partially scored by Prince's music basically.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like, I love the museum scene in particular with Party Man. Yeah. Where they improve the paintings.
It also it kicked off Batman movies having sweet soundtracks for like the 90s.
I guess, are you referring to Seal doing Kiss from a Rose?
Oh, yeah.
For the Batman Forever soundtrack?
Yeah. There's some other bangers on those soundtracks, too.
Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, I'm reading that Gooey's got a whole shelf full of Batman soundtracks here.
I do have, on vinyl, I think I still have it, I have the Riddler single by Method Man.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, man.
Yeah, so, yep, definitely.
What happened with that? Because now you'll just get the nominal bummer cover of like an 80s song to go with like every new movie that comes out.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I do appreciate that Will Smith did a credits rap for Aladdin. He's holding true to the credits rap.
How many more million do you think that he got to do that?
Oh, yeah, that was probably a large percentage of his pay, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, this is the guy who like makes movies where he's, you know, killed by a jellyfish now. Like he's a real actor. Like he's not going to rap over stuff. But yeah, he did it.
Yeah, that's mostly disappeared. I think like Black Panther had it. Like I think Kendrick Lamar did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing like you know, where it's like we're literally rapping about the movie. Like that's what needs to come back.
Now I'm thinking about, I guess, Black Panther as being like the African American like Batman of the 21st century.
Oh yeah, it's also just massive. Yeah.
Every movie now that you see, it's, you know, if it's a reboot or just some sort of comic book movie, it's always, you know, some slowed down cover of an 80s tune. Somehow, Ghost in the Shell somehow managed to make a slower version of Enjoy the Silence.
Oh, I don't
like a real peppy
that trailer
song
at all.
Words like violence break the silence, come crashing into my little world, painful to...
Yeah, that's a trend that I feel like it just jumped the shark recently with the Rambo trailer and Old Town Road.
Yeah.
So I'm...
That wasn't even... That's like the third version of Old Town Road to come out in like 6 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that's one of those things too, because it was Rambo, where it's like, okay, now your parents are in on the meme.
Oh, that's literally what it was. Yeah, they're just like, who's gonna like this movie? You know, people who are 50 and up. And so, what are people 50 and up listening to? This weird Lil Nas X like song with Billy Ray Cyrus on it.
So we're gonna get a new trailer trend soon. I'm predicting, and maybe in 2020.
What do you think it's gonna be? We've done the WOMs. We've done the bummer covers.
I think this has been done before, but I think it's gonna start to be like the rhythmic cuts with the music, like it happens in the Hobbs and Shaw trailer, where they're like punching guys, and like the cuts are going like boom, 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 boom.
Access denied. Access denied.
Access denied.
And it happened in the
Suicide Squad?
Suicide Squad.
Yeah, they do that, yeah.
Godzilla trailer had it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be the next big thing is like super, which I think is fun for now, is like, you know, upbeat, like rhythmic cuts that are like percussive, you know?
Yeah, okay, well, your mouth to God's ears. We'll see if that happens.
I'm a trend, you know, I got my eye on the trends, so.
yeah, I believe it. So I'm curious, where did this movie find you then, or where did you find this movie?
Well, so a lot of my favorite movies as a kid, this was one of them. I was super big into Beetlejuice, actually. That was one of my top 3 movies as a child. But a lot of my favorites were actually from like 89 to 92, and I think maybe that's just because of like home video. Like, just wear out the VHS tape of it.
Yeah.
So it's another one where like I don't remember like the first time I saw it. I just know like I just always was into Batman.
Yeah.
At least the movies as a kid. So that, and I also like Batman and Robin and all that. Like they were all like lumped together, you know. It'd just be like hang out at my cousin's house and watch a bunch of Batman movies or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles and all that. So.
Ninja Turtles,
Batman and the Ninja Turtles.
I of course, you know, famously, I think this was within the time period that I wasn't really allowed to watch movies. So for me, you know what? It was. I remember the first movie I saw in the theater was 1989's The Burbs.
Okay. Oh, I think I've seen that.
Tom Hanks comedy, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm surprised I went back. It's not a good movie. But so so when this came out, it would have been in the summer. It would have been probably a little too early for me to just be going in and out of the theater. So I did what I did for a lot of movies back then. This is pathetic. I read the novelization.
Oh, wow!
It was a novelization by Craig Gardner. Yeah, and it was on it made the New York Times bestseller list, and it was by Hatchet Book Group. And I'm not familiar with their work, but if you want a book company that sounds like a bunch of hacks just writing down what happens in a movie, Hatchet Book Group is your one.
I've only ever read the novelization for The Phantom Menace because I was
really?
Yeah, it came out when I was like 9.
Perfect time.
It was at the library. I was like, I can't wait to read it. Collected the Mountain Dew cans.
Oh, I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not pathetic. Maybe because I don't want to feel pathetic.
And I remember thinking like the book was pretty good. There were actually some scenes in the book that weren't in the movie. And for me, you know, as a 10-year-old or whatever I was, I didn't understand that. Like when I went to see the movie, I was disappointed because I was like,
wow.
Where's the part where he does the thing? Like I didn't really get that. Like that's not, no, we got to fill out like, you know, a book to be a little longer than a script is.
So you were like, the book was better.
Yeah, the book was way better.
Wow. Yeah. You don't really recognize that kind of stuff, I guess, at that age either. You're just like, yeah, there was more, so it was better.
That was kind of a first for me. And then Batman Forever was one of the first times that I realized that, like, something isn't good necessarily just because I want to like it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
that's like a reoccurring theme on the show so far, right?
Yeah. But I remember watching Batman Forever and being like, I hate this. How could I hate something with Batman in it? That's crazy. And then Batman and Robin came out and I was like, oh, no, it's bad.
Yeah. Oh, that's a weird thing to come to terms with, I think.
What'd you think of Keaton as Batman?
It had been a minute since I'd seen it and I was going back into it with this whole like discourse about who's a good Batman coming in, and I felt like he was good. I felt like it was more about Bruce Wayne than Batman.
Okay, yeah.
Like for a while, like Batman is just kind of teased in the movie, so I was like more focused on like, okay, like what's he bringing to like this character? And I thought I think he's a great actor. He doesn't look like what you think of, I guess, when you think of Bruce Wayne. Like he's got this weird curly haircut and he's wearing early 90s, late 80s sweaters. You know, he looks kind of
a lot
dorky.
of turtlenecks. Yeah, a lot of Steve Jobs action going on.
But I was into it. I was into his interpretation.
And he's 5'9".
Yeah, he just seems like a big dork, I guess.
I did enjoy the focus on the psychology of it, and it's clear that, I mean, this is Tim Burton here. it's clear that there is a emphasis on the idea of being a freak, and how you deal with that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's quite as successful on the Bruce Wayne side as it is on the Jack Napier Joker side, but that's something that is continually reinforced in the dialogue, what people think about you. And there's that scene with Vicky Vale where she's talking about, he's trying to give her like the secrets to the chemical combinations or whatever, the poisons. And he's like, yeah, just take this. And she's like, people are kind of scared of you and they think that you're a freak. And he's like, what people? It's like, that's not how you smooth that over. But I'm not sure that really goes anywhere ultimately.
Right. It's kind of an incomplete element, but I did like it while it was happening. But then in the end I was like, oh, okay, it didn't really do anything.
Yeah, it gives itself over to the revenge story that we get, of course, because in this world, the Joker killed Batman's parents. But it does paint the edges, literally, in some scenes of the movie, and I really like that. The fact that the Joker's got all of his henchmen are like having fun and dancing around and doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
They're not just like silent. And of course, Bob is such a fun touch.
Yeah. I like I think the movie is so well made that even it's like little flaws and stuff I'm like willing to forgive a little bit.
Yeah.
From the story perspective, I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking that when I was watching it, like it is really well made. Like I am not a real big fan of Tim Burton's films. I love Beetlejuice and I like this movie, and then I guess Mars Attacks is
Attacks,
okay.
yeah.
But it's more just a collection of things that happen. It's not really like a full narrative. But other than that, like I just not a huge fan. But yeah, I was watching this and going like, man, even in '89, you think about all the miniature shots that had to go into this with the flying around and stuff, the crowd shots. Like he's really handling this movie. Like it looks really great.
Yeah, and he had a strong interpretation of how Batman should be perceived, which I think was cool.
Yeah.
Even with some of the stuff that looks cheesy now, like where the suit, like he looks goofy in the suit, or like when he's flying around, like because of like his like take on it, it makes it feel like intentional and like kind of like mysterious when he like floats up into the sky all awkwardly,
It was important for him to depict how people see and perceive Batman, which I thought was cool. And it's the opposite of what you get in, say, Dark Phoenix, when the president calls up Charles Xavier or whatever, and is like, oh, Mr. Xavier, we need your help. Yes, we'll be right there. Like they've got like a 60s Batman hotline to the White House, which I thought was like, is that what the X-Men are?
Yeah, I think that's just like, I don't want to be like, oh, movies now are bad and movies used to be good, but it seems like a trend now where it's like people just can't people have no restraint almost. Like we just got to get to the Dark Phoenix storyline.
Right.
Know?
So how do we do that? Oh, that trope of like, oh, just call the president.
Right. So like this, it's like Batman, he's not in it for a while,
Yeah, yeah. Except for the end of the film where Batman writes a letter to the cops and they read it to everybody.
Yeah.
After this guy has murdered hundreds of people and like literally blown up a chemical factory on like the edge of town.
I think this starts I don't know if it starts it because I don't read the comics, but the movies at least of like Batman movies introducing heavy ideas and then like not really like following through on it. Like I think that happens a little bit in like the Nolan films too.
Yeah.
It ends with him freeing an army of cops and it's like, okay,
yeah.
It's weird, I guess.
And the Dark Knight it's all about that, or at least it wants to be in part about that, like the idea of control and, in the sort of post 9/11 Bush years, like, do we give ultimate power to somebody that we don't have any control over? And the movie kind of says, yeah, we should.
I think they all do, kind of.
Yeah. Because that was
in the end, it's like, well, we want to see Batman like save, like this movie maybe would have been better if like Batman like quit or died in the end, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's interesting. It also opens the debate of like, I guess movie Batman just is a murderer. That's just what he does. That's fine. I'm not like totally Zack Snyder on this. I don't know if you heard like Zack Snyder recently.
Oh yeah, come to the real world.
Yeah, wake up everybody. Of course he's a murderer.
I felt that way about this movie, but in like the most opposite way, where I was like, yeah, it makes sense. He would kill someone in this movie,
it's such a goofy world. Like it is dark, and they went a long way towards making it, gothic, and you've got these huge statues, and Gotham City is just like a painting come to life. So there are dark elements, but at the same time, it's like it's a cartoon. The guy's dancing around paintings,
the prince.
What is it to murder somebody in this world? Nothing.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention fast. We didn't talk much about the cast other than Keaton and Nicholson. One of my favorite character actors is in this movie. William Hootkins plays Eckhart, and if you don't exactly recognize him, if I said that he played Porkins in Star Wars, you might recognize him from that. He also played the top men guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark. At the end of Raiders, they got the Ark back, and they're like talking to the government guys. They're like, "Where's the Ark?" And he's like, "We've got our top men working on it." Top men.
Yeah. Okay.
So he is an American, but he, I think, is one of those guys who did a lot of work on these films like that were shot, in Britain, like around Pinewood Studios, like Star Wars and some of Raiders was.
Who was the reporter guy?
Robert Wool.
Yeah, I couldn't place him. But he looks so familiar. But I feel like I haven't seen much he's actually in.
He hasn't done much.
Yeah.
I think he was on Franklin and Bash a couple years ago, but he was mainly known he was on an HBO show called Arliss, where he plays. It's sort of like, what if The Rock was like white and kind of nebbishy and, was still a sports agent.
I see. I really liked him in this movie. I felt like he had like a charisma that I kept being like, why don't I know who this is? Like, I liked him a lot.
This was also like, 1989, right? This is like the last vestiges of like, you can have this kind of goofy, like horn dog character that doesn't end up seeming super like toxic. Like he's like, he wants to get in Vicky's pants, but she's like, no, it's not going to happen. He's like, okay.
Yeah. It definitely is of a time. Maybe it's because the time or whatever, it like doesn't come off as bad as it seems. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of you could criticize about this movie, though, for, from a like feminist perspective, for sure.
Yeah.
That was, speaking of incomplete character arcs in the end, where she's just like, okay, like I'm cool with like being your like,
I'm Batman's girlfriend. That's enough for me.
Yeah, that wasn't the problem. The problem was just that he wouldn't tell her about his parents being murdered.
Anyway, we'll take a break right here for a message from our sponsor, and we'll be back to talk about more BackTrekking.
The Via VHS podcast is changing lives. Here's some testimonials. Bill from Tallahassee, Florida says, I was able to quit my job and get a Ferrari, just like Magnum P.I. Sue from San Diego, California says, wow, it really helped with my crippling depression. Thanks, Via VHS. And Tom from Charlotte, North Carolina says, it cured my genital warts. Wow. Listen to the Via VHS podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play.
Okay, so we did it. We covered Batman 1989. I guess. I could talk about that movie forever, but I think we hit all the high spots. So there's a scene in that film where Jack Nicholson, or at least the younger version of his character, murders the Waynes, Bruce Wayne's parents, and asks young Bruce Wayne if he ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight.
Yeah, so there's our super tight connection.
Yes.
At least the start of it.
Which is never explained. He literally says, oh, I just think it's a cool thing to say. Like, that's
I'm
just
okay
something
with
that
I think.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
Sam Hamm, was just tooling around at the supermarket and went, ooh, and then, wrote something down and then had to jam that into a script later.
It's like the Goodyear blimp.
What's funny is... Good callback. Yeah.
Blackmail.
We had an agreement!
I'm making a new agreement. Treachery.
What we need to do is bring the Romulans into the war on our side.
Deception.
When they're finished with us, they're coming after you.
Tactics of war.
No one wants to see the Dominion destroyed more than I do.
Or Sisko's weapons of choice.
As far as you're concerned, you're working for me.
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
What's funny is that this episode of Deep Space Nine in the Pale Moonlight for me, really gives context to that. It literally means nothing, which maybe is thematic in Batman 1989, but we are literally talking here about somebody who is nominally a good guy, an angel, walking on the wild side, and what happens. Andrew Robinson, who plays Garrick in the episode, was interviewed about it. He talks about how this shows that like you can't, if you sleep with the devil, you're gonna have sex, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah, for me, like when I was like thinking about at least like the themes of this, I did think a little bit about how Batman kind of has these morality themes, and I was like,
just murders hundreds of people, but yeah, right.
That's always
He's
the
good
thing.
guy.
Like, oh, he doesn't kill, and the especially the stories they tell with the Joker, like in the Dark Knight, where it's like, oh, kill me or whatever. So
Right.
I was thinking, okay, like maybe the line he's saying, it's kind of drawing on that idea, but maybe it is just whatever. I thought of. Just threw it out there.
This episode, like I said, came out in the middle of the 6th season. It was written by two people. It was written by Peter Allen Fields, who I can't remember if we've talked about on this show, but he wrote some of really the best episodes of TNG and DS9. He did the teleplay of The Inner Light that we talked about before. And he also wrote Necessary Evil, which is an episode that we talked about on Enterprising Individuals.
Yeah. So, yeah, he's like he's a legend here.
Yeah, he is a legend. And it was also written by Michael Taylor. He wrote the teleplay. He also wrote the classic season 4 episode, The Visitor. And he works a lot with Ronald D. Moore. He worked on the Battlestar Galactica reboot as well.
I love that. I have a friend who's going through Deep Space Nine right now, and that's the next episode he has to watch. And I'm like, you have to watch this now so we can talk about it.
So I guess if people should be, I hope, familiar, but do you want to give people a rundown of what happens in the Pale Moonlight?
This is one where it's like, it's not like you can't just really jump into this one. There's like a lot going on. Yeah. So they're trying to get the Romulans to basically join up with the Federation and the Klingons, I believe, in their war against the Dominion. And Sisko is working with Garrick to do some sketchy things that maybe would be frowned upon by Starfleet, to kind of lie to the Romulans to get them to go along into the war. And so it's kind of it is like a morality tale a little bit with how far will he go.
And those decisions that he makes, I've seen this 100 times, but just watching this like most recent time for this show, like I noticed that those decisions are reinforced continually by what he is experiencing emotionally, especially when he is posting these lists of the dead. He talks about like every Friday, it's this tradition that I go to the room, the ready room or the wardroom, and I post these lists of all the people who are dead or missing, and it becomes this sort of collective horrible grieving experience where everybody has to like check the list and say, it's my cousin or that guy I knew in high school. Like we're just continually confronted by this.
Right.
And there's a part in the episode where he's I can't remember what he's doing specifically, but he's having like a crisis of conscience about this situation, and then he goes back to his office and there's another report that he has to put up, and for him it's just like, that's it, I'll do whatever I have to do, be it illegal, be it unethical, I need this to stop.
Right. And I love how that's kind of like the line crossing is like the conceit of the episode, because it has this interesting format where he's like doing this log the whole time, which is a thing in Star Trek we normally see, but he's doing it like a monologue to the camera.
Yeah.
And it's very intense and kind of sad, I guess. But the whole idea is he's like immediately like, I'm crossing the line.
He talks about opening a door and closing it behind him.
Yeah. I don't know why the Dark Knight connections keep coming up, but that whole movie is like, how far is too far? Like, and then it's like you have to like kind of wait till the end to see like what they have to say about that. But in this, it feels like It's like, no, we're going far, and then we're gonna like examine the like repercussions of it, I guess.
Yeah, Sisko is trying to be the hero that they need, but not the one they deserve.
Right, yeah.
Wrong Batman movie.
Yeah, but we've gotta tie this up as close as we can, you know?
Yeah. Instead it should be you are a vicious bastard, Vreenak, and I'm glad you're dead.
What killed the dinosaurs?
Yeah. Yeah, he's trying to he's trying to manufacture his own Reichstag fire, you know, or his own, that you hear the rumors about how FDR kind of knew that maybe the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor, but it was like, yeah, just let it happen. It's fine. Because we need some event that's going to spur the Romulans, you know, to get into this thing.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna lose. They've invaded Beta Z, which, you know, the maps are always a little fuzzy, but we come to understand is, you know, one of the core systems here. They've got access to the heart of the Alpha Quadrant.
Yeah, and it's obviously like meant to be conflicting because, like you said, Sisko is like this person that I presumably connect with and root for, you know.
Yeah,
and then it's like it's not even like subtle. It's like, yeah, he's doing bad stuff, and you're gonna have to watch him deal with it.
Yeah, and the episode goes to great lengths to show just again and again he's confronted with a situation where he could turn back or there's some kind of complication. And it isn't just you can agree to sell your soul or to compromise yourself to achieve something important, but it's all these little compromises along the way. There's the great one where the guy that they hired to create the video or the holo video stabs Quark, I guess. And so he has to go to Quark and go, what's it going to take to get this to go away? And of course, Quark is super excited that he's caught Sisko trying to bribe him. Yeah. And then later on, you know, it's like Garak says he's found some other guy who can get the rod, but he wants 200 liters of biomimetic gel or whatever it is, which I think we're given to understand is like yellow cake uranium, like it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
And of course Sisko's like, well, I don't want to do that, but then it's like, okay, I guess we have to do that.
And he he doesn't like turn back in the end, which is, I think, even more interesting. It's just his plan doesn't work, right? But then it keeps going. Yeah. And so it's not even a moment of like redemption either. It's just like, well, your plan didn't work, and then this thing also happened, so you got what you wanted, but you know they make it so he didn't do it, but it's still like, hey,
but he set it all in motion.
Yeah.
So Garak was just, you know, hemming pants until he came and talked to him. I also like that when he comes and talks to him, he goes to him like the next day and goes, so what's going on with that? And Garak's like, everybody died. Everybody I talked to died. So this is going to be a lot tougher than you think, you know?
That was funny. But also, yeah, it also sets up like right away, like, yep, this is some shady territory that you can't really come back from.
Yeah. I also thought that, and this is, you know, people love this episode. It's, you know, one of the highest rated episodes. It comes up in all the top 10 lists. Some people say it is the best episode of Deep Space Nine, which partially sort of rankles my sense of why do people always like the episodes that are specifically trying to not be Star Trek for a little bit? Like people love Yesterday's Enterprise, which is all about like war and sacrifice and living in a horrible world. And, you know, The Inner Light is an example of an episode that is, I think, holds up the values of Star Trek, but itself does not take place on the Enterprise. So I don't know. People like things that stand out. But in this episode, I try to imagine somebody like, say, Picard being involved in this situation. Say that and he probably never would, but he found himself embroiled in this situation. If it all failed, or even if it succeeded, I feel like he would have to come out with it. You know, he would be, even if it was damaging, he's like, look, I got to tell people what happened. Like, we can't keep this secret. And what defines this episode and makes it what it is that Sisko says specifically, I can live with it. I have to live with it because of what we accomplished. Even though it's going to destroy me, it will sacrifice, like Garak says, the self-respect of one Starfleet officer.
Right, yeah. That's why I said the last time around about, like, Blood Oath was where it's like they just make you live with the stuff. It's like, yeah, the antithesis of what you get with Next Generation, where it's just like, yeah, we'll talk about it and it'll be all right.
Garrick is great in this episode. We've seen him do sort of spy and cloak and dagger, skullduggery things before, but to see him kind of set loose with Starfleet approval, basically, you get to see sort of the full extent of his powers and what he can do, and he gets the job done.
Right. Yeah, Garrick is so good just as a character. That was my reaction to him at first. Was just he's I love how a character like this can be so prominent, compared to like, Next Gen, like side characters would, they come and go, but no one like this.
And they do a great job of continually making him sort of relevant and connected to what's going on, because an episode like The Wire, where we learn more about his background and his actions, like in the Cardassian Tal Shiar, or even the episode where his mentor Tane is killed. Like, it seems like you're closing these doors. It seems like maybe he'll just be a Taylor going forward, or maybe we phase the character out. But they keep finding ways to keep him relevant until, of course, we come full circle, and now we're going to start the liberation of Cardassia, and it becomes very important for him to be there, a character who had given up any hope of ever seeing his home again and now has something to fight for, the liberation of his homeworld.
Yeah, it's amazing that a character like that in a show like this can, like, in the final episodes, like, still come to that point,
Yeah. And like when they take, they always have like the cast pictures where it's like, oh, here's the main cast. Like, he's never in those pictures.
Right,
but
yeah.
A lot of people consider him to be one of their favorite characters. So,
no, he's crucial.
And he is a bad man in this. This was always his plan, up to the point where Vreenak shows up on the station. Garrick's like, oh, I'm just going to go check out their ship. And at this point, Sisko's in so deep that he doesn't really think twice about it. But yeah, Garrick this was always the plan. He was always going to blow up the senator and everything and kill the other guy. And he knew that from the beginning, that's what it was going to take.
Yeah. And I wonder, I guess we do get the Sisko personal log is, presumably his true thoughts. But it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, I wonder if he kind of maybe knew that it was going to go somewhere like this,
I think that he probably he was probably surprised at his own naivety. It's one thing to say, like, it's like if we've all got like friends or acquaintances who are like, I'm not so sure about them. And if they invite you to a party, for instance, you're like, I don't think that that's going to be a party that I really enjoy. I'm not sure I'm going to like where it goes or what happens there. But you don't know exactly what it's going to be. And then you find yourself going to the party and you're like, I knew this was going to be bad, but Jesus Christ, look at what's going on here. That's kind of how I feel like it is. Like, I feel like he knew that Garrick's world was a world that he didn't want any part of as a upright person and a Starfleet officer. But when he finally finds himself in it, like just that scene where his crew, not knowing the whole situation, go, hey, did you hear that Romulan senator got blown up? I mean, it's a tragedy, but this is great. Like, the Romulans might enter the war. And he's like, I gotta go. And he just goes and like kicks the shit out of Garrick. I don't think that he even understood, like he never even conceived like how deep he could find himself in it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll accept your defense of Sisko.
Well, thank you. A standout in this episode for me is the aforementioned Vreenak, played by Canadian actor Stephen McHattie, who is one of my favorite character actors. And we're warned how disdainful he will be, and somehow he tops it. Like, he comes on and he is immediately a gigantic asshole to Sisko.
Oh yeah, they always I know it's like they're playing it up. The Romulans are always playing up how much of assholes they are, and it's a little on the nose, but I always find myself being offended on behalf of Sisko there.
The scene between them where Sisko is getting ready to tell him about this recording that they have, and it's just a great piece of writing. They're talking about he's serving him like this sort of Romulan ale substitute. And the guy's talking about how yeah, it's a pretty good copy, it's a pretty good replica. And then Sisko gives him his whole pitch, and he's not impressed, and he ends it up with it really is a good replica. He's just still talking about that, but it's also kind of about that was a nice pitch, but I don't believe you, and with this whole thing. Yeah,
and it's always it's like a backhanded compliment always with them. Yeah,
and of course we can't forget about it's a fake.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, that one's a little cheesy, but I love it.
It's I wonder what the choice was, because everybody talks about that. It's a meme, but
what was the direction?
It is because it is slightly silly, but I still feel like emotionally it works. What else would you do? Just have him go, I know you lied to me. Where's the real Rod, or what's going on? But just having him be like, it's a fake, and then we never see him again. That's it.
Right. Does it go to commercial right then? Right.
Yeah.
And that's all you need too, because you're just waiting. You're like Sisko. You're like, oh, are they gonna buy it? Are they gonna buy it or not? And yeah, it's just what else could you say there?
Yeah. I'd say the work by Avery Brooks in this episode is great. There's a thing about Avery Brooks as an actor, which is, and speaking of theatricality, he's a very theatrical actor, but yet he has the gift where you believe him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you met him as a real person, you'd be like, wow, this guy's really animated, and why does he sort of talk like that? But you don't believe that he's doing that for your benefit. You just believe that, okay, Sisko is a guy that's just really animated and just sort of gets really excited about things when he talks. And he just puts that on full display, especially in an episode where we don't get this a lot in scripted drama, but he's looking right at the camera,
Yeah, maybe that would be kind of a taboo or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think that you would get that in Star Trek, but yeah, he's just sort of confessing.
Yeah, if I was thinking about that when you said why do people like these episodes that are so different, and then you were speaking of the people responsible for this episode are responsible for a lot of those, and I think it is just because it's that's a bold choice maybe to make for an episode of Star Trek. Because I could totally see the alternate version of this that's the same story in a more traditional way, but this sticks out so much and is so memorable because of they're let's just let him go ham acting at the camera,
Sam Ham. Yeah. I still just think about Janeway. I think Janeway could get talked into it by the McKee crew members or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then 2/3 of the way through the episode, she'd be like, no, we can't do this.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, Sisko decides he can live with it.
And Picard would have a clever third option that nobody thought of.
Right. Yeah.
That
or Data would just fix it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Avery Brooks has this energy that's weird where it's you see him in real life and it's is that even, that's the same human being? So he had you know what I mean? Whereas Patrick Stewart, it seems I could have guessed what he is in real life from watching him act.
Well, he's blazing it all the time, apparently.
Yeah. Where Avery Brooks is just he's intense. He's
Did you see, I want to talk about your connection to DS9. Did you see the documentary?
I haven't yet. I didn't see any showings near me. I must have just missed it or whatever. Yeah. So now I'm just waiting for it to come out on home video.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Well, yeah. Streaming or.
Yeah. So I haven't seen it yet.
They do talk about him as a performer and also as a director in that video. And I think other people feel the same way. He is he's a presence, He's a certain type of person. Very intriguing guy. Well, here's something that we haven't done in a little while, but I think it might apply to this. Trek has future technology, and the things that we talk about the movies that we talk about sometimes feature things like that. Batman also has a lot of gadgets and technology.
Oh, yeah.
So I was thinking that we could do a technological exchange and see how Batman might be different if Batman possessed some technological advancements from the world of Star Trek.
That is a great idea.
So I'll get our random list out. This is only the second time we've used it, so I'll say what's on the list again. We've got phasers. We've got holodecks, or I guess in this case, just holograms. Tricorders, transporter technology, warp drive, replicators, communicators, shields, the advanced medical tech they enjoy on Star Trek, and androids. So we'll roll our 10-sided die, because we're nerds. And the result that I got was number 5. That gives us warp drive.
Okay.
How would Batman 1989 be different if Batman possessed warp drive on the Batwing?
Oh, that would make, I guess, that last scene a little bit more interesting.
He would have got those balloons a lot faster.
You got to the moon with that one shot.
Right. He's just on the moon, just burns a bat with a laser into the moon. I think that if when the Joker shoots him with his telescoping gun, which is just it's the best gag in the movie.
Oh, so good, yeah.
And then the Batwing crashes on the steps of the Gotham Cathedral. Maybe we're looking at a warp core breach there. Maybe it would add a complication.
Oh, so probably a better final act there too.
Before he just sort of crawls out and he has to, stalk his way up the cathedral steps, he's got to eject the warp core and fix that situation so Gotham doesn't explode.
I love that. You could cut out him just like dangling from the top of the, what do you call it, the church or whatever they're in.
Yeah, right.
Just cut that part out and have the warp core breach.
I think we're also supposed to subtract the technology from the Trek episode and see how it changes. So if there was no warp drive in this galaxy-spanning war that we're dealing with, how would that change things?
War's over.
Yeah, war's over. No war. Although there is a wormhole, though, right? So let's say that you are the Bajorans and you have been taken over by the Cardassians. You'd still be taken over because they're close together, those systems. So presumably with conventional rocket technology, you could, reach one in enough time to take over the system. So the Bajorans would not be liberated. They wouldn't have any help from the Federation. There's still a mining station near orbiting Bajor. So maybe somehow somebody stumbles across the wormhole and you've got a possible invasion of the Gamma Quadrant from the Alpha Quadrant or the other way around. I always thought it was fascinating. They go into this a little bit in DS9, but they never dig too far into it. They suggest that Bajor had spacefaring technology, not warp drive, but like these light sail ships, in their past. And clearly having this wormhole, like either the prophets like once walked among the Bajorans, or more likely they discovered the wormhole so long ago in their past that it's sort of become history and like legend and religion for them. But they must have like contacted it at some point.
I was kind of under the impression, that like some people in the past had communicated with their prophets, and that's like how the religion eventually developed.
Yeah.
They had to have, I think maybe they didn't even have to go into the wormhole, like you could have a close encounter out in space there or something.
Sure. And of course the prophets saw fit to cage the paw wraiths on Bajor as well. So something happened in the past. If you were HBO, you'd be working on a prequel series about that right now.
Oh, I'm like you said, I'm sure like
Alex Kurtzman's probably working on a prequel series about that
please,
right now.
HBO, take this idea. What if, okay, so, you take out the warp drives or whatever, but what if everyone then had batarangs? Then
yes,
war's back on.
Yeah, war's back. Batarangs or that gun that is just for shooting a line in two different directions.
Oh yeah, very specific tech Batman gets into.
Yeah, I know. He just knows exactly what he needs. I was looking at my old like Batman comics, like the Denny O'Neil era, and trying to figure out like if this was the first appearance of the gas-powered grapnel. Like, I think before this, Batman just threw a batarang like with a thing attached to it. And, of course, this movie introduces the idea that he's got a gun. It's not a gun because he doesn't use guns, except he uses a ton of guns as long as they're on a vehicle in Batman. But the idea of, like, shooting that thing out, which is then ported over into the animated series, and now that's just like Batman's got that. Like in the comics, movies, Affleck or whatever, that's just how he gets around.
Yeah, that's one cool thing about Batman, I guess, is that it's always like even some of the weirder things. Like I'm sure there's something from like Batman and Robin that has been incorporated somewhere else into Batman, not just to make fun of it.
Oh yeah, like Harley Quinn was based on a Christmas like elf character that Bruce Timm created, and then later was adapted for the animated series, became very popular, and then was ported back into the regular comics continuity, and now of course is in the movies and stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Picard show, great. Animated Lower Deck show, great. But there are many, many roads left to take, I think, as far as exploring the Star Trek universe on the small screen.
Sure, yeah.
And maybe even the big screen.
If we can hear a surf rock Star Trek theme, that's the new trend in movie trailers is surf rock.
Screw the
covers.
Beastie Boys.
yeah.
We'll do Miserloo instead, yeah, for sure. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Should we tell people what's coming up on next week's BackTrekking?
Okay, so for next week,
Okay, check this out.
Here it comes. We're doing our first Voyager episode.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about that because I'm a little less familiar. I've watched a lot of Voyager, but
sure,
who knows if I've seen this one. We're watching the episode Macrocosm, which has a lot of similarities to the film Alien.
Oh, really? I thought it was Rambo.
Some have said. I don't know which Rambo that would be. Maybe just Rambo.
The idea of
Rambo,
the animated series. Yeah.
yeah, the NES game.
Which I remember playing. I played that, and I remember I'd never seen the movies, of course, and so I was like, Vietnam, huh? Seems fun. Like I didn't, all lost on me, which honestly, it's a Nintendo game from like 1988 or whatever. Like, why are you trying to tell kids about like Vietnam and POWs?
Yeah, well, they had to slap the name on there.
Right. Get the explosive arrow. That's the best one. Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about next time, so join us then. And that's it for this week's BackTrekking. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, tell a friend. That's really the best way to get the word out about the show. You can also follow us at BackTrekking on Twitter. You can tell us what you think we should look at in future episodes. We are always looking for new connections between pop culture and Star Trek, so send us your suggestions. And like and subscribe wherever you find us, all that good stuff. And we will see you again soon. Gooey, tell people where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter at GooeyFame, and you can check out my podcast Virtual Theater at Virtual Theater X on Twitter. Our most recent episode is about the Resident Evil movie, so if you're into video game movies or bad movies or whatever, check that out.
And I'm at Ka1iban, that's Ka1iban on Twitter. And also you can find my show Just Enough Trope at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And this week coming up on Just Enough Trope, we're talking about the HBO series Chernobyl. So that's going to be a fun time.
No, exciting. I need to watch that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Check it out. And that's it for us. We'll see you soon and keep on trekking.